He had instinct that was beyond the average football player. Alan's a very bright guy, and he's always was interested in why we did things. You know, not many players ask why. They just, you say, do this, they do it. Well, Alan was more interested in why and how, and made him a better player.
Some players are great. Alan Page was different. NFL legends don't remember him for highlights. They remember what it felt like to prepare for him. A man who brought intelligence, iron discipline, and relentless pressure every single snap. Not the biggest on the field, not the loudest, just consistently, suffocatingly dominant. He anchored one of the most terrifying defenses the NFL has ever seen, and when the game was over, he walked into a courtroom and became a Supreme Court justice. Alan Page didn't just play football. He showed the world what a man is actually capable of.
My approach to the game was always to go out and play well, down after down after down. And for me to do that, I couldn't be focused on who the opponent was. I couldn't be focused on either how good they were perceived to be or how bad they were perceived to be. I had to be focused on playing as well as I could. And so as a result of that, I didn't spend a lot of time qualifying or quantifying the opponents or the games or anything else, because there was always another game coming. And hopefully the next one I was going to do better than the last one.
You're staying in retirement. The fellows like Alex Karras and who's that fellow from the Vikings? Do you have any bearing on your decision? Alan Page?
There's a young boy by the number of Alan Page. Fine young football player. Got a lot of desire, a lot of heart, a lot of speed. And anytime I consider coming out of retirement, I think of Alan Page. And it makes retirement just a little bit easier.
I grew up in Bloomington, Minnesota. Everybody in my neighborhood playing football in the backyard had Vikings jerseys, but they were all number 10, Fran Tarkenton, number 44, Chuck Foreman. My parents had to get me a purple shirt and iron on 2 88s. I had the only Alan Page jersey in the neighborhood. It was moth-eaten. My mother was mortified to send me out of the house with it. And when I was in second grade, my friend Troy, his father managed the Holiday Inn in Bloomington. And everybody knew that Saturday night before home games, the Vikings stayed there. I got to the Holiday Inn, and Troy's dad told me, Alan Page doesn't sign autographs. And it just crushed me. I couldn't believe it. And then so the doors opened, and all of a sudden Alan Page blew past me, turned as if he'd forgotten to pick up his room key or something, came back, saw this kid in his 88 jersey trembling, and he put his hand on my head as if he were palming a grapefruit or something, tousled my hair, I had some then, picked up my spiral notebook and my Bic banana, signed his beautiful autograph, handed the thing back to me, and then went back and disappeared up the stairwell. And I just stood there shaking in this pool of admiration and probably urine as well. 25 years after that, when I told Page this story of my seeking the autograph from him and my having that only threadbare Alan Page jersey, a few months later, in the mail, I get a 3/4 sleeve white 88 jersey that he had signed to me and said, this is to replace that jersey that you lost when you were 8. I can count on one hand the number of interview subjects that I've gotten a handwritten note from afterwards.
Yes, Alan Page. So, James, when he came to the league in 1967, he was a very small defensive tackle, maybe even a little bit smallish for that era. But let me tell you, the guy was so quick, he could disrupt. Look how quick he is off the ball right there. I mean, just watch the video.
Sure.
But 1971, as a defensive tackle, won league MVP. I know that's old school, 1971. Right. It's not that old school, okay? Quarterbacks were still pretty doggone good. Right. Alan Page, easy Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer.
The 71 season for Alan, it was very unlikely for him to be the most valuable player. But so many good things were happening to him. I mean, he just dominated football.
He revolutionized the defensive tackle position. When he came in, he said the coaches wanted him to kind of man this 1 square yard of space, his lane. He never found that particularly interesting. And so you'd see him going through all different kinds of gaps. You'd see him swimming around 2 defenders at the same time. You'd see him pulling different colored jerseys down, and maybe one of those guys had the ball and he'll sort it out afterwards. He looked just huge in uniform with those pads on. But out of uniform, he's a fairly skinny guy. He's run 1,000 marathons. You would not think that he was one of the greatest players in the history of the National Football League. He was studying law in the locker room as an NFL player. Had this notion of becoming a lawyer since he was a kid, and football stardom, unusual for a lot of athletes, didn't interest him. He thought it was kind of silly that people thought he was better than other people because he could play football. And that's one of the reasons he didn't sign autographs for a long time, was because he didn't feel like, I'm somebody that you should think is special just because I play football. He doesn't have a single football memento in his office. He has a lot of mementos about Jim Crow and things that remind him of the power lawmakers and judges and courts and the legal system can have in people's lives and in changing society. And I think that's what he's most proud of, and that's the source of his greatest accomplishment.
I was thinking, why didn't Alan Page make this list? Like, is it a generational thing? And then that's incorrect, because Deacon Jones and Dick Butkus both made this list, both of them before sacks became an official stat, so that's not it. And then I was thinking, well, maybe it's a Super Bowl ring thing, but defensive players, it really doesn't matter. You know, outside of quarterbacks, you don't judge the player's worth by how many rings they have. And also, 4 out of the 10 players on this list don't have a Super Bowl ring, including 0 for 4 with Bruce Smith, just like Alan Page 0 for 4 with the Vikings. So that isn't it as well. And Alan Page's resume speaks for itself. He's a 9-time straight Pro Bowler, 6-time first-team All-Pro. The other 3 years, he was second-team All-Pro. Again, 1971 NFL MVP, only one of 2 defensive players to ever win the award. That should automatically put him in the top 10, if not the top 3. And also, so they didn't officially record stats as an... try that again. They didn't record sacks as an official stat until 1982. So the fact that he did this in 1971, you know how difficult it is to have a non-quarterback, non-running back win the NFL MVP? He did it as a defensive player when they did not count stats, did not count sacks. So just his sheer dominance is what won the day and what got him the NFL MVP, which is just amazing.
Had recovered a fumble and was running, and without looking, he flipped the ball behind. Jim Marshall picked it up, went in for a touchdown. That's one of the all-time great plays. And when you use something like that, you're MVP.
Alan Page wasn't just an NFL force. He was proof that greatness doesn't stop at the final whistle. Sundays, he was dismantling offenses. The rest of the week, he was building something bigger. NFL legends will tell you, the respect for his game is deep, but the admiration for the man runs deeper, because when it was all said and done, Alan Page wasn't defined by his sack totals or his MVP trophy. He was defined by how he carried himself on the field, in the courtroom, and in life. That's a different level entirely.